Here's a thought experiment. Imagine you're building a web application in a single JavaScript file. At first, this is fine, maybe 100 lines, easy to navigate. But then you add authentication. Then a database layer. Then a payment system. Then an admin dashboard. Before long, you have 20,000 lines of code in one file, and every function can see and modify every other function's variables. How do you even begin to test any of this? How do you reuse the payment logic in a separate project? How do you prevent a junior developer from accidentally overwriting a critical variable? This is the problem modules were invented to solve. Modules are the fundamental mechanism for structuring non-trivial applications. The book is emphatic about this: they are the bricks of larger applications. And they accomplish 4 distinct things that no amount of disciplined coding alone can provide. First, they split a large codebase into small files, each file focused on one responsibility. Second, they allow code reuse. The same module can be loaded by dozens of different parts of your application without copying and pasting. Third, they provide encapsulation, what the book calls information hiding. A module decides what it exposes and what it keeps private. The outside world cannot reach into a module and touch its internals unless the module explicitly allows it. Fourth, they let you manage dependencies explicitly. When module A needs module B, it declares that relationship. The dependency graph becomes visible and controllable. Before Node.js had a module system, JavaScript developers worked around this problem using a technique called the immediately invoked function expression, the IIFE. You wrap your code in a function and call it immediately, creating a private scope. Everything inside that function is invisible to the outside world. This was clever, but manual and fragile. Node.js took this idea and formalized it into a first-class module system, and today it actually has 2 of them. Understanding both is what this chapter is about. Before CommonJS and ESM existed, JavaScript developers in the browser had a serious problem. The browser has one global scope. Every script you load dumps its variables into that shared space. Load jQuery, load your analytics library, load your app code, they all share the same window object. One library accidentally names a variable the same as another, and you have a collision that's nearly impossible to debug. The community solution was elegant: exploit the fact that functions in JavaScript create their own scope. If you define a function and immediately call it, everything inside that function is isolated from the global scope. This is the IIFE, the immediately invoked function expression. You've probably seen the pattern: it's a function wrapped in parentheses, followed immediately by a second pair of parentheses that calls it. The result that the IIFE returns becomes your module's public API. Everything else stays private. This evolved into what became known as the revealing module pattern. The key insight is in the name: you reveal only what you want to reveal. You write all your code inside the IIFE, and at the end you return an object containing only the functions and values that you want external code to access. Private helper functions, internal state, implementation details, none of that gets returned, so none of that is accessible. This pattern was so effective that entire libraries were built with it. jQuery is essentially a very sophisticated revealing module. The authors of Node.js studied this pattern carefully when designing the CommonJS module system. They took the core insight, function scope, as a privacy boundary, and made it automatic. In Node.js, every file is automatically wrapped in a function. You don't write the IIFE yourself, Node.js does it for you. That's why the module scope works without any extra syntax. You're building on a 30-year-old idea that still underpins modern JavaScript architecture. Here's the situation that every Node.js developer needs to understand clearly, because confusion about this causes real problems. Node.js today ships with 2 completely separate module systems. The first is CommonJS, which has been the default since Node.js version 0.1 in 2009. Every tutorial you read before 2020, every NPM package from that era, everything that uses require, that's CommonJS. The second is ECMAScript modules, ESM, which is the official JavaScript standard created by TC39 and implemented in all modern browsers and in Node.js starting with version 12. ESM uses import and export statements. These 2 systems are not compatible in simple ways. They have different syntax, different semantics, different loading behavior, and different interoperability rules. A file using require is a CommonJS module. A file using import is an ESM module. You cannot freely mix them. The distinction matters because the JavaScript ecosystem is in the middle of a long, slow migration from CommonJS to ESM. Many packages are now ESM only. Some are CommonJS only. Some ship dual formats. When you get a cryptic error message saying require is not defined or cannot use import statement in a module, the module system mismatch is almost certainly the cause. The chapter covers both systems in depth, so you'll understand not just the syntax but the underlying mechanics, how modules get loaded, how caching works, how circular dependencies are handled. By the end, the error messages will make sense, the package.json configuration options will make sense, and you'll be able to work confidently with any codebase regardless of which module system it uses.